And in previous episodes, I've talked about how difficult it is when like you talk to a newcomer to Bitcoin and you talk about inflation and debasement and that they are in essence theft. And in my experience, like people find that a really like hard word, and sometimes they tune out, maybe because it's so confrontational or something. But I also have heard you use the word theft a lot. Can you explain like why inflation and debasement are actually theft? I think you're the person that can explain this most rationally, probably.
Yeah, I think it, and by the way, I understand why people would not want to see it that way. And or if it challenges some of their beliefs and then they want to push back. So I totally understand and have empathy for people sitting inside a system. But when you realize that the free market is deflationary, right? And that's not a guess. Like prices fall to the marginal cost of production. We have exponentially rising productivity because of technology. And by the way, a couple of insights to that. If you measured that productivity through the entire manipulated system, you wouldn't see as much productivity. But if you measured productivity where what's happening, you have exponential technology that's driving
Is that also, sorry to interrupt, but is that also, I saw a great chart on Twitter of someone who had the price of the NASDAQ in dollars, that goes up, obviously. But against M2, like in real value, it actually goes down, and it's under the value of the tech in 2000, which arguably we now have better technology, right? But it's worth less.
This is why it's so hard to see, because people are measuring through a system with the error code in it. So what you have to do is you have to use first principles to understand what would happen if there was no error code, if there was no theft or debasement or anything else. So why I find it easier just to talk about technology in that way is you can have some first principle discussions. You can say, do prices fall to the marginal cost of production over time? The answer is yes. Like no matter what, over a long enough time horizon, prices fall to the marginal cost of production. Then you can ask, what is the marginal cost of production of a line of code? And then you can ask, what is the marginal cost of production for lines of code written by other lines of code? And you can see where we're going and why technology drives. And if number one is true and number two is true, then that means if you had a honest ledger or an honest monetary system that didn't debase currencies, that didn't change the rules, didn't print more currency units, then prices would fall every year as society would live on top of that. Prices falling every year. Some places prices would fall faster. Some places it would run at the rate of technology in the free market. And so every year, based on just that being true, you would probably gain. People would have to work 5% less, get 5% more each year just by staying standard. So everyone on the planet would benefit. You'd be getting richer, but that's not the system we live in, right? So that's a system that would be true in a system that couldn't be manipulated. And the system, but this is important because you have to stop this. So that's true, and what I'm about to say is true. If you allowed a credit-based system to collapse, if you let a credit-based system prices fall, then the debt becomes, in real terms, you can't pay back immediately, and the whole thing keeps falling. So it keeps falling. So we have to explore that system too. And that system that we live in, or we price most things from, today has about $400 trillion of insolvent debt. So the debt's already insolvent, right? If you tried to pay back the $400 trillion at $1 a second, it would take 12,683,000 years to pay back. But it's worse than that, because that's assuming you could pay it back. And you have to ask yourself, where are the taxes to pay back the debt from your calculator app that you use every day now? Right? It's free. The point is the technology is driving these things to free, and that you create the abundance based on that technology. So what's happening is the ledger is being manipulated at a greater and greater rate, that the theft, and it's transferring that wealth from people who, because inflation is wage deflation. And it's transferring that wealth from people who have assets to from people who don't have assets. So their wages are going down in real terms to try to pay back the debts that is already insolvent. And it's transferring it to people who hold assets or government to be able to do that process. And it is theft because you don't have a vote in it. You don't. So both these things are true, right? So we say we live in and so one system, what it would look like under an honest system, and what it does look like under the system that we drive all of our decisions by. Now, the problem is, inside that system that we live in and we price everything by, we don't see how great an impact that is on our lives. We don't. So we just trust all of these institutions. It's like it always used to be. And so these things are true at the same time. What's happening with Bitcoin is if you're measuring Bitcoin in price from the manipulated system, then you're actually thinking about trading Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
What's actually happening is we have two different worlds emerging. One that's pricing what I just explained that can't be fucked with. And so if you're measuring in Bitcoin, prices will fall for you forever. And if you're pricing in the existing system, prices will rise forever.
Is it then also that because we changed the technology of money with Bitcoin to a protocol, to lines of code, don't want to say it's free, but it also goes down to
marginal cost of production. But actually, that's true right now. You can see hash rate going up.
Yeah.
Right.
So instead of also the value of the old money becoming less and less and less, it's the new money that's just going up forever then.
So I'd like to look at it the other way, because if you think it's going up forever, you're measuring it from the value in the old system, right? And that's what most people do. And so if you do that in Argentina today, Bitcoin's hitting all-time records. Now, are the people in Argentina necessarily richer because their money's losing value at that rate? So if you measure in the debasing currency, you're automatically defaulting to measure your world in the broken on the broken ledger. And if you're measuring in this thing that can't be manipulated, you're automatically measuring your world in economic law that prices fall to the marginal cost of production over time.
And how do we then take a step to an abundant future? Like, if this is the cause, what will it result in? Like, why will the future then be abundant?
So because the incentives are exactly opposite from the existing system, and most people carry their baggage from, just like you're doing right now in pricing, right? Most people carry their baggage from the old system on how it looks under misaligned incentives to the new system on how it doesn't, and they're totally different systems that work almost 180 from each other. One concentrates wealth in very few hands and power, and eventually destroys what you believe your democracy is. Mm-hmm. Because money is superordinate to laws. If it wasn't, then the places with the most broken money in the world would have the best laws protecting their citizens. Why doesn't it look like that? So you can see what I'm saying is true, right? Mm-hmm. And now you just have to ask, how fast are we destroying our money here? And you can see how fast laws will break down and division of society will break down as a result. And all of these things are consequences of broken money that get worse and worse. So you can now ask yourself, where are you on that lever? You don't vote in your country for how much money is manipulated.
Yeah, correct.
And as that becomes a greater and greater stealth tax or repressive tax that hurts some people in favor of others, then it becomes more and more of the amount of revenue the government's making that's based on theft. And as it becomes more and more based on, so you don't have a vote in one of the most important drivers of wealth in your life. So how could you say that you actually live in a democracy if you don't have a vote in one of the most important drivers? And you can see by that construct why all over the world individual rights and freedoms are going down, because they have to go down over time to support theft that has to grow exponentially to be able to pay a debt that is already insolvent. Yeah. So, and that leads to a control function out of governments. And so all of these things that we see all over the world, and why people get trapped in them from the existing system is they make them stronger through their actions. They think that there's a solve by dividing society, right? So how would you get elected in a system that looked like that? You would prey on a whole bunch of people that said, I can solve your problem. It's those bad people that do that. You divide society, and you would sit on top of that by dividing. And then when it couldn't fix it because it's based on broken money in that, and you've already divided your society, you would have to create a bigger enemy elsewhere, right? And you'd have to convince your society to go to war to fight for the thing that they believe in, to be able to create a war somewhere else. It's why these things are pretty natural and what we're having today, and why the world gets pretty frightening from the system that's decaying. And so how do you solve that? You just impose. Bitcoin imposes a discipline. It's becoming a peer-to-peer internet backed by energy. Yeah. And you impose that discipline and the incentives that creates that have more and more people walking across the bridge to create the new system. We're still really early. This system has more power in our lives, and we feed it. The one we're in, the decaying system, and we feed it by yelling at it, by marching against it, by voting for it, and everything else. Yeah. And people don't realize that they could stop paying for $400 trillion of debt tomorrow,